Coach, hey, as always, thank you for joining me. Thanks for sitting on the hot seat. Thanks for ready to take the slings and arrows from a Purple Raider. Appreciate you being on. Love the beard.
Of course, thank you. Like I said, my two kids are really liking it. They like to grab it and play with it. So
yeah.
I'll keep
Dad,
it in
I
the
don't
winter
like
months.
you.
That's right.
That's awesome. Hey, let's just jump right into it because I have some interesting thoughts about John Carroll soccer from 2023 season. But let me know your thinking. How do you think your season went?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a two-pronged answer for me. I think if you look at it in terms of the landscape of a Division III program, it's a very successful year, a lot of great accomplishments, and a lot to be proud of. And I definitely agree with a lot to be proud of and a lot of accomplishments. You know, anytime you can win 14 games, I believe we played 9 NCAA tournament teams. Mm-hmm. Our SOS at the end of the season, or end of the non-conference, was top 5 in the country. Mm-hmm. You know, 7th straight national tournament bid in a row, which I believe is top 5 or 6 in the country in terms of streaks in D3. You're proud of all that, but we're definitely disappointed as a program. And the reason why we're disappointed is because of our standard, and our standard is dictated by us. So if you look at the bigger picture, I have one answer. If you look at us in a vacuum, you know, here internally, I have a different answer. But again, I still think we had a great year. I just think we're disappointed in how it went, in a sense, because we expected more, and we didn't achieve all of our goals.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I don't know what it was watching you this year. Because I, based on our conversation the last time, you'd said some things that I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting year for John Carroll. And I kept looking for more. And I don't know. That stretch during the regular season, maybe you could talk where you went. I was happy, don't get me wrong, where you go to Otterbein, you lose, go to Capital, you lose, and then you go to Mount and you lose. Just walk me through those, because I thought you looked real, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word.
Yeah.
But you didn't look like, something didn't seem right to me.
Right. I'll take you back, into my head and how it was here internally. You know, before that Otterbein game, which was a Wednesday, we had just beat Northern at Northern, who obviously is a tremendous program, and we have a great deal of respect for them. And you beat Northern, you're 5-0 in the conference, you're ranked first in the region in the rankings that matter. Yeah. And I found out I had COVID. And,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and again, I am not making excuses. It happens, and you have to deal with it. But up until that point, and I even remember waking up on Monday feeling like, man, I don't know if I've ever felt this good about where we're at in the season in my 22 years at Carroll. I really felt like we were hitting on all cylinders. We were getting better every day, whether it was on the training pitch or in a game. And the stars were really aligning for what we wanted in terms of, like I said, these regional rankings and all this stuff for the postseason. And I'll be honest, when I was so convinced that I didn't have COVID, I had my wife do the test for me. I handed her the swab, and I was like, just make sure I don't have it so I can get up to school and get back to work, because we had training that afternoon. And I'll never forget her face when that thing turned positive, because I just felt like my world was crashing down on me. Yeah. And being gone, away from the team for a week during the season is the worst thing a coach can do to its players. Yeah. I let them down. I completely take responsibility for everything that happened that week, including with my coaching staff and support staff and whatever. But they say experience is the hardest teacher, because the lesson, the test comes before the lesson, right? And we've never dealt with something like that before. And you can try to manage a team from your bedroom in isolation, when adversity hits, but there's nothing like being there and having a hands-on approach to help your team through a very difficult time. So again, I am not taking, and I want to be crystal clear on this, I am not taking any credit away from Otterbein, from Capital, from Mount Union. You know, they're very good teams, and that could have happened if I didn't get COVID, but it definitely affected us internally, and unfortunately I couldn't come up with an answer to get us back on track until I was, you know, back on campus and back with the team. So it was definitely one of the most difficult things I've dealt with personally in my career, because it's a very helpless feeling where you see bad things happening and you can't do anything to fix it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, I'm glad you're healthy again. Like, was it one of those cases where you tested positive but you didn't feel bad? You just, like, maybe a cold, or were you, like, really crushed?
Yeah, what happened to me was I very rarely get headaches. Like, I could probably on one hand count in my life where I could tell you I remember having a headache, and I woke up and my head was pounding, like migraine-ish kind of feeling. And I kind of waited a couple hours before I left for school, because I knew I didn't feel right, and I just wanted to wait to see if this thing would go away. And I'm not a big Aleve and ibuprofen dude either, so I didn't want to take that. But you know, it got to the point where, like I said, I looked at my wife. I'm like, hey, go get me a couple whatever so I can get into the office and get to work. And it was honestly, she was the one like, why don't you test? Because we've always been very safe with that, like almost like to test just to prove you don't have it, and you can get that out of your head, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I was so sure, because I no sneezing, no coughing, no other symptoms. It was just a very bad headache, like a pounding headache, and to the point where, like I said, I swabbed myself and I handed her the thing to do the test, you know, and I started getting ready, like I started, you know, putting clothes on to go to work, and like I said, I saw her face when that thing went positive, and I don't know if I'll ever get that image out of my head.
Yeah.
So yeah, I literally had like a migraine for a week, is what I would tell you. That's
how you do. Yeah. Well, that, you know what? Like I said, I'm, again, not being on the inside, but on the outside, just in the Mount Union game, something just didn't look right. Like, and I watched the Otterbein game, and I just thought something didn't look right. I couldn't understand. Because I thought that stretch, believe it or not, was kind of critical, right? Like, that's a critical stretch for you. I'm not saying that you need to win every single game, but, right, I thought the one that you'd stand the most chance was the Otterbein game, and then the Capital and the Mount game, just to me, just seemed like you looked so vulnerable, and I thought, wow, that is just so weird. That's not something characteristic of the teams that you coach, so...
yeah, I mean, in one sense, you know when it's happening as a coach, because when you've done this for as long as I have, you know everything is critical when it comes to conference play, especially in a great conference like the OAC. And part of it, ironically, made me feel proud of like all the things that we've done in the past and how much we've been able to win in the championships, because it does, like, one bad week and you put yourself in a very bad spot. So it was definitely a learning experience and something I've never felt I would have to prepare for. Like I can't remember the last time I missed a practice, let alone a game, in 22 years. So, but again, it happens. You got to deal with it. Adversity comes in every season, and unfortunately, we were not able to overcome that.
Yeah. Well, then I just go right, like, I mean. And you sort of corrected course, right? I guess when you were back, right, you go to Muskegum, you play Capital in the OEC, and then you go to PKs against Otterbein, but that could happen at that point. So, and then you win at St. Mary's, or down in Fredericksburg at Mary Washington. But that's interesting. I had no idea. So glad you're healthy. I'm not going to ask you what your challenges were because I think you just kind of told me. What surprised you? What surprised you?
Probably a couple things. I mean, one, I thought we were just really hot out of the gates. We really reconstructed our entire preseason. We almost ripped it up and started from scratch. And I really felt that our new approach worked. And I felt like in terms of the non-conference, like I said, going into even the second week of the OAC, I felt like we were further ahead than we had ever been in a season before. So it was really great to get some very good results, especially some big results on the road against the kind of non-conference schedule that we play. Obviously, the COVID period was a curveball, but another thing that really surprised me was how the players bounced back after it. They're not used to this, and what I mean by that is, when I got back and we started getting things corrected, and it was clear that we weren't going to be a top 2 seed, I brought everyone in, including the entire coaching staff and trainers, and I said, raise your hand if you've played in the OAC quarterfinal before. And I was the only one who put my hand up. So it was new territory that they hadn't been used to. But truthfully, I thought, that second game against Capital in the quarterfinal, we started to look back to ourselves. I thought against Otterbein we played great. I mean, that was a really good game. Obviously, Otterbein is excellent, and that game could have went either way. PKs is cruel, but really good game. I thought we played very well, and I thought Otterbein did too. And then going into the national tournament, I thought we played excellent as well. So the roller coaster of the season is it's a constant that's going to happen year in and year out. But I think the peaks and valleys were a little higher and lower this year. So the fact that we were able to dig ourselves out and play as well as we did was something I was really proud of.
I did think you guys were on a roll. Like, again, I think at one point I had said something on the channel where I was like, they're just reloaded, I got to ask you something. You said in preseason you sort of ripped it up and started over again. What did you mean about? Like, did you just try a new system? Did you?
Yeah, brand new system. It basically, I know people are going to probably laugh when I say this, but we didn't spend that much time on the field, and when we were on the field, we were doing a lot more teaching than playing. And I think in years past, you're trying to just sort through and get through a preseason as healthy as possible and not run down and whatever. But we really went into teaching mode pretty early, and I don't think it was a coincidence that we looked as good as we did there in that first month.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you didn't. So it sounded, I don't know, it's like my impressions of a spring season, right? Like, that's when you do most of your teaching, but it sounds like that, it was the same approach here? Like, it wasn't...
I think it's a little different than what you do in the spring, because at the end of the day, you don't have your full roster with you, and yes, you can get a lot accomplished and you can be proactive with stuff like that, but until you really get the group together, and there's games staring at you in the face in 10, 12, 14 days, I think there's a little bit different outcome with the way we approached it this year. So, again, by no means did we reinvent the wheel or, do something that no one ever has thought of before. I just think it was a little different in terms of how the guys took it and how quickly they were able to apply it.
What was your all right, so you deal with COVID and you sort of get back on track, the OAC tournament semifinal notwithstanding, you go to PKs, right? You play well, you feel like you're back on track. What was your thinking, or what was the sentiment going into the NCAAs?
I think that guys, again, they were in a space they've never been before, not going to a final and having to play in a quarter and stuff like that. I think the group was very motivated. I think they know what happened to us was a pretty extreme circumstance, and everyone felt some responsibility one way or another. So I think it was just a chance to get back out there and prove, how good we were, and just get that second chance to go compete at that highest level.
And then you go up against a really good Mary Washington. What was that game like?
Great game. Probably one of the greatest games I've been a part of in my career. I thought, obviously, Mary Washington's very good. They were in the Final Four the year before and very highly ranked all season long. It was a battle, back and forth, 5 goals. I think the way I would say it to you is I think they had the better of us in the first half. I think we had the better of them in the second half, and that game could have really went either way. They put away the chances that they had. We only put away one of ours. I think it was 1-1.5, I believe. So, yeah, that game could have went either way, but I was really proud of how our guys fought and battled, and I truly feel that they proved that they're at that caliber of a program with the Mary Washington and the top dogs in the country with that performance that day.
I didn't doubt it after that game. I think you guys tied it up with like 20 minutes left, and I thought to myself, this is John, you guys are going to take this. Like, I just thought it was that moment where, you're like, man, my legs feel lighter and I'm feeling better, and here we go, and we're tied it up and we're back in this, and let's get rolling. And then
sure,
because so I watched a lot of you guys because I had thought in my head, based on a conversation that we had, that I thought you guys were very, very good, and I thought that you could have obviously come up against Mary Washington, but you could have made a super deep run, right? And I don't know if it changes. I'm assuming it would have changed sort of your trajectory had you won the tournament, right? And you just got the automatic qualifier. But I was sort of like, well, I think if I look at 10 teams that I think could win it, I thought you guys at the start were definitely up there.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask, what are you thinking about next year now? Just based on what your roster looks like, because I know, for those who don't know, you guys carry a lot of guys. Or I don't know if you carry it, but you have a big roster, big pool of players. So, what are your thoughts about 2024?
Yeah, I'm real big on reflection and self-assessment, and trust me, I think my self-assessment started the second that test went positive, if I'm being honest. But we spent a lot of time thinking about how to get better, how to improve things, that relentless pursuit of better that we talk about. And that growth mindset applies to everything that we do, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, 16 seniors were on the roster this year. 3 of them were fifth year, so obviously they've exhausted their eligibility and can't come back. And then we're working through the 13 guys who can. Now, 5 of them are coming back for sure. Mm-hmm. 3 or 4 are for sure not coming back, and then we're waiting for answers on the other. I'm not sure how other programs do it, but I am very low pressure. I've told my guys, if you tell me the day before preseason you're coming back or you're not coming back, that's okay. I think it's completely up to them, and they have to do what's best for them and their future. And guys are in a situation where they have a couple job offers, or they can come back and play, and they have to navigate through that kind of stuff with their family. So, yeah,
it's tricky. It's very tricky for them, right? Like, it's not the easy choice is to be, or the choice I'm sure they're all thinking is like, that would be great to play, but when you have all these different alternatives, that's not an easy thing to deal with at that age.
Yeah. The only thing I really tell them, and especially if they ask for it in terms of advice, is that, once you don't play, you never get it back. We all know how it is to work for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Those days, they don't go away for a while, but you only get one chance to play that 5th year. But you have to be 100% invested in that if you want to do it. You got to dive in with both feet. You can't have one foot out the door if you decide to do that. But, for the 5 guys we have coming back, I'm very excited for them. For the guys who are working through it, I want to be patient and supportive, and whatever they decide, I will be good with.
Okay. And then what does the rest of your? I mean, I'll just ask it. Like, how strong do you think you will be next year?
Yeah, my answer is not going to change. I expect us to have another really, really good roster, and I feel that. Again, we'll wait on a couple of these decisions, but based on how recruiting has been going, based on how the guys who are returning, who they are, and waiting on a few more, there's no reason why they can't be the most talented roster in JCU soccer history again.
I wish I could say I like that answer, but I. That you're reloading again. Like I said, I think you every year. I mean, for the last 2 years or 3 years that I've been watching Really Intent, there's never a drop off with you, and which is why I think those 3 games I was kind of like, this doesn't look normal to me, right? Like you don't see that that you guys, like a lot of programs do, right? They reach a top and then they think, okay, and the next year they're down. Yeah, but you guys are consistently at a level, so I find it interesting that you're able to do that. That's why I think you do something illegal, or you must like pay people. They're all professionals from overseas, and you just give them fake documents. I don't know. There's something there. I'll find it. Find it.
The thing I will tell you is I think our guys going into this fall, they feel something they haven't felt before because they didn't win a trophy, right? And yes, they made the second round in the NCAA stuff and whatever. So I think there's a little different type of motivation. I think they're always motivated by something, but I do think their approach is probably going to be a little different than it has been in past years, and that's probably what makes me most excited as a coach, because I don't think you can simulate that unless it actually happens to you.
So in other words, they're good, and now they're hungry because they didn't get the trophies.
Right.
Which is even a worse combination. So this interview's over. No. No, it's interesting, right? Like, I'm serious. Like, I've been just thinking about how teams get far, and you usually find like the teams that sort of carry the momentum are just sort of like they're driven by something that is much different than in the past, and it could be hunger, it could be a bunch of different things, and that not getting a trophy when you're consistently like, man, we always have some hardware. I hate to say it. As a former, well, I still think I'm a player, but former player, like that would grate on me. Like, and I'd be like, I'm out to prove something, all right? So,
it's interesting. I don't know if you remember our first interview. You asked me about like today's player versus when I played and things like that, and the motivation piece. I'm telling you is still one of the most difficult things I think for any coach in any sport. Mm-hmm. This generation is just different. They're motivated by different things. When you played for Mount and I played for JCU, it didn't matter who you were playing, when you were playing. We just thought differently. It was, we're going to go win the game, and it was a personal pride thing. Where these guys are a lot more physically gifted and have a lot more soccer talent than we did. But the mentality side, they're motivated by different things. And like I said, I think everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that, and I think everything that happened to us this past year happened for that reason. So I'm very excited to get back out there in August.
There's no coincidences, right? There's no, like you said, there's things happen for a purpose. We just don't know what that purpose is. And without getting too deep and philosophical and spiritual, I'll just leave it at that. But I totally. You just don't know what that plan is set to evolve, right? Like, it could be the best thing that's ever happened to you coaching, believe it or not, is going through what you did this year, right? Because now it's just going to make you better next year, I think. So, anyhow. All right, so you talk about the amount of teaching you did in the preseason. What does your spring look to shape up? Is it more of that, or are you now starting to think, well, let's change it up again? Or
I think because of the change in the rules for the spring season, it's an opportunity to kind of do things a little different. I think it's going to be a combination of teaching and fun with the additional days, which we're extremely excited about. I love the new setup, but it's going to be an experiment. Nobody knows how this is going to go or what the right answer is yet. We're all going to go out there with our respective ideas and see what happens. But I would tell you it's going to be 50%, hey, we got to teach and we got to learn and we have to continue moving forward. But the other half is going to be, I want these guys to have fun. I want them to enjoy training and whatever games and points and drills that we do. I want them to equally look forward to that as well. So we're going to go with that approach for now and see how things go. But I want the guys leaving the spring season excited to be back on campus for the fall, not all beat up and tired of drills and things like that where they want the break, So I think that combination is what's best for us right now, and we're going to see how that goes.
So it's a big deal for me because and this might be totally out of left field, but how big of a deal is joy or that the players finding enjoyment of the game for you and your staff?
It's huge. And again, I think it goes back to that mentality piece I just mentioned a little bit ago. The coaches we had growing up, it was a dictatorship. It was a my way or the highway. It was you're going to do it and you're going to like it, that kind of thing. And that doesn't work anymore. Our guys, I give them a lot of credit because I do have a lot of that old school in me, even though I'm considered still a younger coach. But I think those core values of discipline and respect and accountability, those are non-negotiable. Like that has to happen, right? But you have to find a way to make the game enjoyable for them. You have to find a way to make training enjoyable for them. And what's fortunate for us at JCU is our guys love to compete, no matter what it is. So you're able to work with a group like that who has that competition mindset and get things accomplished because they're having fun while they're learning, in a sense.
That's my big thing, right? Because I think I've watched so many joyless games and club soccer, which totally. So it's always, you know what I mean? Like they just sort of, it's like, man, it pains me to watch some of these kids play because they're just, it's like, just like eating toast, I guess. I don't know what, but it's just so not joyful. And I'm like, even when you were getting your teeth kicked in, literally and figuratively, back when we played, you stepped on the field and you were pumped. There was some, right? Like it was like,
oh yeah,
hey, I suddenly, for me, it was just like, freedom to just be myself and to do the things I want to do, right? And I think that,
not to get too deep into this one, but I'll give you my 2 cents on that. I just think in this club soccer industry right now, there's too many games. These kids play so much that there's no value when they do play. It's almost like a chore. Like, I have to go back to here to go play, and I got to play this team for the 7th time in 6 months. Whereas we played it. Like you couldn't wait to get back out there. Right, exactly. Once a week, and that's a generational thing. The club soccer setup, we can go on for hours about that, but there's something to be said of why they feel that way. It's human nature, where something happens so frequently, it's hard to appreciate it like you should.
That's a great point because it does. I've been right, like it's joyless, it's meaningless. Right now, I'm sure ECNL and all the folks don't want to necessarily hear that, but it becomes a series of meaningless games because, like you said, maybe they're playing too much, and you can't have meaning attached to every game. And I don't know how you solve that in the youth soccer world, right? Because there's for some folks, there's a reward to having kids playing as many games as you can and all that kind of stuff. I totally get. But it does make it for some pretty bland. Who was I talking to? It And we were saying like you can go watch a game and you don't know who's winning or who's losing because they're just sort of going through it.
Sure.
Like, it's like game's over and nobody knows who won, who lost. Like I think it's just because of that. We could solve this problem with about 5 hours worth of conversation about how to make this better. But it's interesting. And especially you in Ohio and me here, it's funny how you consistently see the same things, right? Like it just, but all right. So I'm gonna ask you a question, and I because we can't not ask this question. Otherwise, my credibility as a crack journalist, investigative reporter goes out the window. Not that I ever had those, but I got to ask you about the whole NCAC move. I think I get it. As a Mount Union grad, I'm laughing. Scaredy cats. Just when Mount got really good in soccer, coach, you tuck tail and run. I get it. Don't get me wrong. No, but seriously, give me your thoughts on the whole move to the NCAC, which, to be quite honest, from a soccer perspective, both on the men's side and the women's side, it's not like you're going to an easier conference. Forget all the other sports. I'm just looking at you guys. You're going into quite the frying pan.
So I have a lot of thoughts and comments on this, so buckle up. This might take a minute.
I am so ready. I got cold coffee and a drink. I'm ready to roll.
First and foremost, just me personally, it's very bittersweet because I've been in the OAC since I was 17 years old. This has been 22 years of being part of this conference. It's been wonderful. Off the top of my head, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Reed Ayers is probably the only one who's been in the OAC longer than I have on the men's side. Right?
He was with Hiram, right? For when he was playing, and we were OAC.
And it's been great. I've loved every minute. I've really appreciated the relationships I've gotten to make with the schools and the players and the coaches. And it's sad in a sense, right? Because it's like a piece of history and a huge part of my life that is going to be a big change. But I'm also equally excited because I feel like this is a move for our institution that is going to propel us forward in a positive way. And what I mean by that is anybody who thinks this is an athletics decision is severely misguided. This has nothing to do with anything but academic alignment, a path forward in terms of being more of a national brand, even though I would argue I think we're already kind of a national brand. And it's just something that, I'll be honest, I'm surprised probably didn't happen sooner. Now, the idea that this decision, I just told you, it was not made based on athletics, but for those who do think it's based on athletics, if they think that we made this decision based on one sport, then we're not a very good athletic department, and I know we are. This, again, is for the health of the university. It is a way bigger picture than avoiding one program, and I can go on down the road of what everyone assumes and what I've read online, which is just infuriating to me because it couldn't be further from the truth. At John Carroll, we do not run from competition. We run at competition. We want competition. That's everything we do, from academics to service to debate team. I can go on and on. If you don't want to compete, you shouldn't come to JCU, because that's what we're all about here. So, like I said, I could go on for a mile a minute on this, but it's very bittersweet for me in the sense of my personal experience and all the relationships. But like I said, I'm excited for the future. And at the end of the day, for us with the men's soccer program specifically, I agree with you. It's a pretty similar situation. Again, I don't want to name schools and leave people out, but very good schools in both conferences. Both conferences have nationally ranked programs who have done really well in recent memory and stuff like that. So it's going to be different. It's going to be a new challenge, but I can't reiterate enough that I'm super excited for it. To give you perspective on my guys, when the rumors started swirling and there was some Twitter stuff going on that I caught wind of, talking to people in our hallway here, it sounded like their student athletes were asking a million questions and what's going on. And, I did not hear from one of my guys at any point.
Interesting.
I think their silence says a lot. And again, not in a negative way. It's, hey, it's out of our control. We control what we can control, and you tell us where we're going to play, and we're going to go play. And that's kind of how we've been programmed here. We want to play the best schedule possible. It doesn't matter who it is or where it is and things like that. So, we're moving into a different conference from there.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. You still have to. You still can't take anything for granted, right? Like, I mean, that's what I think the reality is, that you can't take that for granted. You can't. Your season, whether you were staying in the OAC or now going to the NCAC, like you can't take any of those games for granted, because they're going to be as challenging in either conference, right? Like, I think that's the reality. When I looked at it, and I throw around some jokes here and there, but these are never just flash in the pan decisions that are made willy-nilly, right? Like, there's some real consequences to the moves, and understanding, not only from an athletic standpoint, but just, like you said, institutionally, sort of what does it mean for the institution? And I just think it was bigger. And what do I know, right? Like, I'm just like I said, I just crack jokes about it, and will continue to crack jokes about it as a Purple Raider. But it's okay. It's okay. I will ask you a Mount Union question, because I'm curious. You're the second OAC coach. I had Coach Krems on. And I had Coach Bergen down at Marriott on as well, but I don't think I asked him. And this is a loaded question as well. How slighted was Mount Union for not getting an NCAA bid? I'm just putting you on the spot. Like,
yeah.
This.
I want to make sure. So
we will. I promise we will cut this down and remove it, and I will make it its own video if it's a bad answer.
I apologize for my hesitation. The reason is, again, I really try to stay off the social media, the boards, and people tell me things, and I caught wind, of some of these whatever. Listen, Mount Union was very, very good this year. That was the best team I've ever seen them have in my entire time in the conference. I think Coach Krems did a fantastic job. Carter Hancock is one of the best players in the country. I mean, he is an absolute stud, very good, and they had a great year. And again, I am not talking about David when I say this. I'm talking about, I can't believe people don't understand how the selection works yet, and they get so upset at the end when they see what happens. Now, I used to be that guy. In 2014, I think we were something crazy like 19-3 or something, and we didn't get in. And I think it takes happening to you again to learn the lesson of what the criteria is and what have you. And the SOS stuff is just really, really important. Now, again, I'm just talking about like the selection criteria. I'm not talking about what kind of team they were, because they're 100. They were 100% good enough to be in the national tournament, and they were good enough to make noise. But unfortunately, that's how these things go. And like I said, that happened to me in 2014, and I felt the same way. I felt like we got slighted and things like that. But the reason why I started laughing in the beginning was that people kept saying, I can't believe John Carroll got in over Mount. And I laugh because those people really don't know how this works because Otterbein got in over Mount. It's numerically impossible for John, because of the way the regional rankings work and all that stuff. And I was like, man, I don't know why you're mad at us. You should be mad at Otterbein. Go talk to Jason over there, because the reality is that's really who got selected over them, and that's public knowledge. That's on the NCAA website and whatever. But no, all 7 of the teams in our region who were ranked got in, and like I said, Mount Union was as good or better as some, and from numbers and selection, I understand why they didn't get in. From the human element and watching them play and competing against them, you definitely feel bad for them because they were that good.
Yeah. I don't
know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So to summarize, they got robbed. It's okay. We got it. No, I think they lost or they tied a couple games. That's where that's where it hurt, right? Like just by dropping those points. I think that, and it had no reflection of the season, which I thought they were outstanding. And to your point, I thought this is the best team I'd watched, and I'd watched Mount Union much longer than I started all this nonsense with the YouTube So I've been watching them for much longer, and it is by far the best team that I had watched in all that time.
The part I feel the worst for any team in this situation is that you can't control the results of the teams that you play against, in their own games. So correct. You try to schedule the best way possible, and if a team has a down year, it can really hurt your SOS, and you have nothing to do with it. And I think that's where Mount fell victim to that. Like I said, it wasn't their fault. It just the teams that they played against didn't perform like they traditionally had in the past.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, on that note, I will let you get on with your day. Glad to see you're recovered.
Thank you.
And as always, as much banter as I give you and as much shtick as I give you and John Carroll, I love talking to you. You're one of the good guys in the game. So do appreciate you giving me the time. And yes, believe it or not, I do wear the John Carroll hat out in public. But yeah, really appreciative, Coach, and hopefully we can catch up in person one of these days when I'm out in Ohio.
No doubt. Thank you again, and thank you all for all that you do for D3 soccer. I have to admit, I owe you an apology. I have not watched the show in a minute, but I have a very good reason. My 2-year-old has completely taken over the YouTube channel. Now he's watching Miss Rachel every day. So every time I try to put, one of your shows on, he just grabs that remote and gives me that look. So I got to catch up on past episodes. I promise I'm going to go back to your number one viewer here very shortly once I get that kid away from my account.
Look, the only thing I care about is that you get him to subscribe to my channel. Whether you watch or not after that, just get him to subscribe. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's, you know what? Yeah, that's what kids do. They own you for the longest time.
Miss Rachel has taught my child way more about everything than I have, and I feel terrible about that. So I gotta raise my game here.
Yeah, you got work to do. You better hit the gym. Start hitting the gym, and then that's awesome. All right, Coach. We'll be in touch. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.